General Pervez Musharraf has certainly fallen a long way. Once the strong man in a nation of nearly 200 million, today he languishes as a prisoner in his own home. Armed police and rangers outside, more for his own protection than to prevent his escape. He'd ruled the country for almost a decade, having overthrown its democratically elected government in 1999. But despite enjoying full support from the US government as a loyal ally in the so-called War on Terror, Musharraf fled Pakistan in 2008 after his attempts to overrule the country's judicial system failed and domestic political support completely collapsed. But with Pakistan facing corruption, instability, political violence and an energy crisis, the general-turned-politician returned to the country last month as a self-styled saviour of the nation to run in the May 11th elections. For the general, it was a major strategic error. The support he expected simply wasn't there. What he did get was a shoe thrown at his face by a lawyer. Things turned from bad to worse as he faced a raft of lawsuits and charges stemming from his actions as military ruler. As Musharraf attended a hearing in Islamabad's High Court, the judge issued an order for his arrest, a historic moment in a nation where military leaders are seen as untouchable. He quickly fled the court where the arrest order was issued and returned to his residence. He's now become a prisoner in his own farmhouse here outside Rawalpindi. We were prevented from joining domestic Pakistani media at the entrance. The police told us they were under strict orders not to allow international media through. Amid all of this chaos, there's at least one woman who's glad Musharraf has returned to face justice, even if that wasn't his plan. 4 days a week, Amina Masood Janjua drives to the Supreme Court in Islamabad to file cases for what are known as Pakistan's missing persons. One of Pervez Musharraf's biggest controversies, still ongoing but now almost forgotten by the mainstream media, is the campaign of enforced disappearances conducted by Pakistan's intelligence agencies at the behest of the United States in the wake of the invasion of neighbouring Afghanistan. Pervez Musharraf admits in his biography that he handed over hundreds of suspects, including many Pakistani citizens, without charge or trial to the US for bounties totaling millions of dollars. The campaign later included domestic political dissidents, human rights organisers, journalists, or those who simply appeared suspect. Some have ended up rendition to US secret prisons around the world. Others are assumed held by Pakistani agencies for years without charge, trial, or any contact with the outside world. Amina's husband, Masood Ahmed Janjua, a successful businessman until his disappearance, is among them.
I believe that Masood is still detained somewhere very close, in Rawalpindi or Islamabad area, where I have been given evidences from many detainees. There are cells in this area. If anybody has died, you come to accept that thing, Your heart is at peace because he is with God. The soul has departed. But feeling that your loved one is in trouble, he's detained, he can't see the sun, he can't breathe properly, he can't be given good food, natural air, and especially he's away from his loving family. These tears are heart apart, and it gives us more spirit to fight.
Why do you think after 8 years they won't release him?
I think they are afraid of the media factor because it has been like one of the top of the list case, and it has been termed as because of my struggle, it has become too much of limelight on. Everybody wants to know about the fate of my husband, what happened to him.
It was her husband's disappearance that sparked her activism. Today, Amina Masood Janjua is leading the campaign to trace and release these missing persons. Without the funds needed to hire lawyers, she's learned and applied the law herself for both her own husband's case and hundreds of others in the same situation.
if you think that they are a terrorist, you bring them in open court of law and prove it. Then we also challenge that all those who were disappeared are innocent because they have been taken out of the reach of the law. And I felt for those wives, those mothers who were in search of their loved ones, but they could not find any clues. All the corridors of power were closed for them. I found myself responsible to guide them or to hold their hand for recovery of their loved ones. I have become one of the lawyers, like lawyers, I would say, and the judges have accepted me like this.
There has, until now, been no progress on the likes of Masood Janjua. Musharraf's return to Pakistan and subsequent arrest has provided new hope for those families whose members were disappeared under his regime and remain missing.
He was the ex-president as well as the chief of army staff. When he is, the law is stronger than him. So if the law is holding him accountable, then in future the things will be brighter, of course. There will be more rule of law. The civil society is going to be stronger in future. And we are going to have a new political government very soon. So things will not be easy for the hierarchy in the army. So they are going to think twice now before doing any kind of illegal activities.
Okay, now we accept that Pervez Musharraf from a third world country and third world country rulers, particularly dictators, are very vulnerable and they are weak. But what about those who are buying human beings for $5,000? Is it not reminiscent of the slave trade which used to go on?
Retired General Hamid Gul previously headed Pakistan's biggest intelligence agency, the ISI, in the late 1980s. Once an ally of the US fighting the Soviets in Afghanistan, he's now become a fierce critic and says the United States must accept responsibility for the alleged kidnappings, torture and renditions committed in its name.
Somebody should question them. But I think the West as a whole and the Western society as a whole is somehow becoming bankrupt in morality. And that really hurts us because they set the values for us. Many of the exalted values were actually set before us because we were ruled by the British for so long, and they told us rule of law, honesty, dedication and truthfulness and respect for humanity and this, that, the other. Where is it all gone?
Amina's campaign includes cases from across Pakistan from all regions. I joined her as she travelled to the town of Bakar, close to Pakistan's tribal regions. Here we met the children of Shaukat Hayat, now living with their uncle after the disappearance of their father.
उनका पेशावर में घर से बाहर निकल रहे थे, मेन रोड पे जब आए तो पकड़ लिए पुलिस वालों ने, सब आर्मी वालों ने पकड़ लिए। तो उसके बाद कोई पता नहीं है कि वो कहाँ हैं, ये किधर हैं, कोई बताता भी नहीं है कि वो कहाँ हैं, ये किधर हैं। बहुत मुश्किल से एक बार पता चला है, फिर उसके बाद नहीं चला। तो उनका कसूर नहीं है, वो पेशावर में ही काम करते थे, घर आते थे, सुबह जाते थे, मगरिब को आते थे, मगर फिर भी उन्होंने पकड़ लिया कि आप दहशतगर्द हैं, इस तरह उस तरह, फिर भी उन्होंने पकड़ लिया।
लेकिन उन्होंने कोई पाकिस्तान को कोई नुकसान नहीं किया?
नहीं, बिल्कुल नहीं किया। हम बहुत पहले से बदल गए हैं, तो आखिर रहना तो है, मुश्किल या आसान, बर्दाश्त तो करनी पड़ेगी।
Also here to show his support was Noor Hassan from Multan, whose son Sajjad was taken less than 2 years ago. He too believes his son is completely innocent.
पीछे एक गाड़ी आई है, आगे एक गाड़ी खड़ी थी ब्लैक रंग की, तो टूडी कार थी, आगे पीछे डबल कैमन डाला है, उसने हाईएस को रोका है, उन्होंने कहा जी तलाशी लेनी है, हम सब बंदे नीचे आ जाए। वो बहाने नीचे के बहाने लेके उस बंदे को उठा लिया, नीचे उतार के उसके गले में काला कपड़ा डाला, गाड़ी में लेके खुदा पे इतना किस तरह चले गए लेके। अभी भी 2 बच्चे आए हैं छुट के, कोई आज से 3 माह पहले उनसे मुलाकात हुई है, उन्होंने कहा जी वो छोड़ देंगे, उसके खिलाफ के कुछ भी नहीं है केस। मगर ये समझ नहीं आती हमें क्यों नहीं छोड़ते लोग, क्या मकसद है? अगर देखो जी उसके खिलाफ कोई कार्रवाई करनी है, अगर है उसके खिलाफ सामने ले आए, करें कार्रवाई, हमें कोई इतराज़ नहीं होगा। ये क्या है कि उसको ले गए हैं, उसके बाद पता ही नहीं है किधर है, कैसे रहता है, तो उसकी वालदा बीमार, वो कभी मरती है कभी जीती है, वो सोचते हैं मेरा बच्चा है कि नहीं है। तसल्लियाँ तो हम तो देते हैं, लेकिन जी तकलीफ़ें तो बहुत है ना।
Through its policies in the region, the US appears to be creating new enemies unnecessarily. Many of these families were previously oblivious to politics, foreign affairs, and the so-called war on terror, until it was brought down upon them.
People get more annoyed and more angry, and when they come to even those who are not educated, when they run into discussion that why all these things are happening or why this is not stopping and why our people are not being released, they at the bottom of the all things they find that there is a very big superpower involved. So in their hearts there is a bad feeling for this power that whoever the US is, they don't wish it well.
हमें बस एक ही सहारा है, एक ही उम्मीद है कि वो जल्द से जल्द आ जाएं और हमारे साथ रहें, हमारे पास रहें.
It's possible that some of the men may have had links with Islamic organizations, but that isn't a crime and there's no evidence that they've broken any laws. Those who are released refuse to speak to the media for fear of being abducted again. Amina claims some of the men have undergone serious torture, while others have died in custody. When I first met Amina back in 2007, I filmed an interview with her husband's aging parents. Back then, their only wish was for their son Masood to face trial or come home while they were still alive. In January this year, Masood's mother passed away, waiting for his return. His father, himself a retired army officer under whom Musharraf once served, now waits alone.
She was bedridden for 4 years. She fought and fought. And in the end, she was simply asking that she couldn't speak, but she was just used to ask about Masood with hands. So, in fact, she was waiting for her son. And when I went to her grave after her death, I uttered the same words which I used to say in her life. I told her that I will keep on struggling and Masood will come back, I promise you that.
But Musharraf's legacy of enforced disappearances continues today. Amina Janjua claims the number of disappearances during the term of the current elected government have actually risen. So far, the civilian government's promises to resolve the issue have amounted to little more than lip service. But she remains optimistic that the US's upcoming withdrawal from Afghanistan and Pakistan's general elections this month will have a positive impact on these cases.
The coming up government will have a better opportunity to do away with the policies of the US and with collaborating with the US. The military will also realize their mistakes by enforcing human rights violations, bombing their own citizens, abducting their own citizens, allowing drones to be on their own citizens. So that has only added to their problems and given them a bad name.
Amina says there are currently more than 900 people who remain disappeared across Pakistan, for whom she's filing cases at the Supreme Court, and she's investigating several hundred more. For General Musharraf, his fate too remains unclear. Nobody can quite understand what he was thinking, returning to a nation where so many are now baying for his blood. It's here at the Supreme Court that General Musharraf's troubles first began during his rule, when the Chief Justice of Pakistan challenged his autocratic rule. And it's here again in Pakistan's courts that Pervez Musharraf finds himself fighting for his very survival, again miscalculating the strength of the judicial system. His predicament will come as a small but welcome measure of justice to the families of Pakistan's missing persons. With cameraman Arsul Jalib, this is Hassan Ghani for The Real News in Islamabad, Pakistan.